Have you ever imagined waking up in a picturesque Greek village, having breakfast with a view of the crystal blue sea, living that Mediterranean life that seems straight out of a movie? Well, prepare yourself for a revelation that will completely shatter this romantic fantasy. Greece, yes, that same Greece of your retirement or life change dreams, has become one of the worst financial and existential traps in modern Europe. While digital influencers sell the illusion of a paradisiacal life among the Greek islands, the brutal reality is that even Greeks themselves are fleeing en masse from their own country. The curiosities about this shocking transformation reveal that the land that invented democracy and Western philosophy now offers fewer opportunities for dignified life than countries considered developing. But here's what nobody tells you: behind those Instagram-worthy photos and travel blogger videos, there's an economic, social and cultural crisis so deep that it has transformed the cradle of civilization into a kind of slow-motion Titanic. The geography of Mediterranean dreams has been completely reconfigured by a reality where third-world salaries meet first-world prices, creating a perfect storm that is destroying not only the economy, but Greece's very soul. If you're planning to move there or even considering it, this might be the most important reality check you'll ever receive. Have you ever stopped to think that your dream country, with its paradisiacal beaches and millennial history, could be a true financial nightmare? Greece, once the cradle of Western civilization, now faces one of the most brutal economic crises in modern Europe. Since 2010, when the sovereign debt crisis exploded, the country has seen its GDP shrink by more than 25%, a devastation comparable to wartime. The curiosities about this Mediterranean nation don't just include its ancient ruins, but also alarming data about its current economy. Well, the truth is that living there has become a Herculean challenge even for the Greeks themselves. Greece's economic geography has changed drastically in recent decades, transforming a once prosperous country into a financial trap. Average salaries have plummeted to around €700 per month, while the cost of living remains European. Imagine paying Paris prices while earning like you're in Brazil's countryside. The banking system, which should be the beating heart of the economy, is practically in a vegetative state after successive bailouts. The geographical curiosities about the Greek islands are fascinating, but they don't compensate for the brutal reality that a simple trip to the supermarket can compromise 40% of family income. Nope, we're not talking about luxury, but basic necessities like bread, milk and hygiene products. What's most impressive is how a country with so much natural and cultural wealth managed to transform into a kind of a promised land only on paper. Taxes are suffocating, they reach 45% for the middle class, while public services are precarious and inefficient. Entrepreneurs report that opening a business in Greece is like trying to plant flowers in concrete, technically possible, but highly unlikely to flourish. Youth unemployment rates exceed 35%, creating an entire generation that lives in hope of emigrating. But hey, at least the landscapes are beautiful, right? Unfortunately, beauty doesn't pay the bills, and that's exactly what's pushing thousands of Greeks out of their own country. Imagine discovering that your dream apartment in Athens costs more than a property in Manhattan, but your salary is lower than an American intern's. That's exactly what's happening in Greece today. The real estate market has become a casino where only foreigners can afford to play. The urban geography of major Greek cities has been completely redesigned by real estate speculation, transforming traditional neighborhoods into playgrounds for wealthy tourists. Rental prices have skyrocketed 300% in central areas over the past 5 years, while local salaries have remained stagnant. The curiosities about the Greek real estate market include the surreal fact that it's cheaper to buy a house in Germany than to rent a decent apartment in Mykonos during summer. The housing crisis reached epic proportions when the Golden Visa program opened the floodgates for foreign investors to buy properties at ridiculously low prices in 2013. Suddenly, Russians, Chinese and Americans began treating Greece like a giant liquidation auction, buying entire properties for prices that barely covered local owners' debts. The result? Greek families who had lived for generations in the same neighborhood were literally expelled from their own homes. The geographical curiosities of the islands have become logistical nightmares for local residents, who now need to compete with millionaire tourists for the basic right to have a roof over their heads. Gentrification wasn't gradual, it was a tsunami that swept away entire communities in a matter of months. What's most revolting is that the Greek government practically sold the country on a silver platter to foreign capital, creating a scenario where being Greek in Greece itself has become an unaffordable luxury. Local teachers, doctors, and engineers now share tiny apartments or are forced to live with their parents at 40 years old. Meanwhile, foreign investors leave properties empty most of the year, using them only as investments or vacation homes. The curiosities about this urban transformation reveal that entire neighborhoods in Athens have more signs in Mandarin and English than in Greek. Well, when you can no longer afford to live in your own country, maybe it's time to question whether it's worth continuing to dream about that Mediterranean paradise. Greece is experiencing the largest brain drain in its modern history, and frankly, it's not hard to understand why. Since 2010, more than 500,000 Greeks, mainly qualified young people, have abandoned the country in search of opportunities that simply no longer exist on Greek soil. The geography of national talent has been completely reconfigured. Doctors work as waiters in Germany, engineers become freelance programmers in London, and university professors accept part-time jobs anywhere that isn't Greece. The curiosities about this massive migration include the bizarre fact that there are more Greek doctors practicing in Germany than in some regions of Greece itself. Well, when a country can't offer a future to its own talents, it's destined for failure. Structural unemployment has reached such absurd levels that working has become almost an aristocratic privilege in Greek society. Among young people aged 18 to 35, the unemployment rate approaches 40%, creating an entire generation that never had the chance to contribute productively to the national economy. The government has failed not only financially, but also as a provider of opportunities, forcing thousands of recent graduates to accept precarious jobs or simply give up looking for work. The geographical curiosities about the Greek islands hide a brutal reality. Many local youth work only during tourist season, spending the rest of the year depending on minimal social benefits. It's absolutely mind-blowing how a country with so much cultural wealth managed to waste an entire generation of human potential. The situation became so desperate that even traditionally stable professions like medicine and law became paths to poverty. Newly graduated doctors work for €600 monthly in rundown hospitals, while lawyers compete for cases that barely pay basic bills. Meanwhile, the private sector is practically dead, with small businesses closing daily due to lack of credit and demand. The curiosities about the Greek job market reveal that it's easier to get a job being a foreigner than being Greek, a cruel irony that perfectly summarizes the current state of the country. But here's the thing, when a nation loses its best talents to other countries, it doesn't just lose people, it loses the future. The Greek healthcare system has transformed into a kind of Russian roulette where your life literally depends on luck. Public hospitals operate with ridiculous budgets, lack of basic medications and equipment that seemed modern in the 80s. The hospital geography of the country was devastated by austerity cuts. Entire regions were left without adequate medical care, forcing patients to travel hundreds of kilometers for simple procedures. The curiosities about the Greek healthcare system include the surreal fact that it's faster and cheaper to have surgery in Bulgaria than to wait in the public queue in Athens. Well, when you need to choose between dying or going into debt with private treatment, something is definitely very wrong. The precariousness of public services has reached levels that would make developing countries look like examples of efficiency. Hospitals operate without heating in winter, nurses work 12 hours straight for starvation wages, and patients bring their own medications and bandaging materials. Meanwhile, waiting times for specialized consultations can reach 2 years, literally, 2 entire seasons can pass before you can see a cardiologist. The geographical curiosities about the islands reveal that many don't even have a resident doctor, depending on emergency helicopters that can't always take off due to weather conditions. It's absolutely heartbreaking to see people dying from treatable diseases simply because the public system has collapsed. What's most revolting is discovering that Greece, the birthplace of modern medicine through Hippocrates, today has one of the worst healthcare systems in Europe. MRI equipment broken for months, operating rooms without adequate ventilation, and doctors who need to use their own cell phones to communicate between departments. But here's the kicker: while public hospitals are dying, private clinics thrive serving medical tourists who come for cosmetic procedures. The curiosities about this absurd duality show that you can get luxury liposuction in Santorini, but can't get a decent X-ray at the public hospital in Thessaloniki. When basic healthcare becomes a luxury item, you know the country has lost its way completely. Greek bureaucracy is like a maze designed by someone who clearly hated humanity, complex, time-consuming and apparently purposeless beyond frustrating any attempt at progress. Opening a simple business can take up to 18 months, involving 15 different departments, each requiring documents that the previous one said was unnecessary. The administrative geography of the country was built to discourage any form of entrepreneurship, government offices scattered throughout the city, operating at contradictory hours and with employees who seem to have been trained in the art of procrastination. The curiosities about the Greek bureaucratic system include the bizarre fact that there are more than 400 different types of commercial licenses, many of them overlapping and contradictory. Well, when the government itself works against citizens, it's hard to imagine how the country can prosper. Corruption isn't just a problem, it's practically an alternative operating system that keeps Greece functioning dysfunctionally. Fakelaki, small envelopes with money, have become so common that many Greeks consider them an unofficial fee to speed up basic processes. From getting a building permit to scheduling a medical appointment, everything runs smoother with a little lubrication, a reality that corrodes public trust and perpetuates inequality. The geographical curiosities about different regions reveal that corruption varies by location. Some islands are practically feudal estates controlled by specific political families. It's absolutely mind-boggling how the land that invented democracy managed to create a system where privileges are bought and sold like commodities. What's most frustrating is that this web of corruption and bureaucracy not only makes life impossible for ordinary citizens, but also scares away serious foreign investors who could help revitalize the economy. Multinational companies report that it's easier to do business in Albania than in Greece, a statement that should shame any Greek politician. Meanwhile, young entrepreneurs give up on their dreams before even trying, knowing the system is programmed for failure. The curiosities about this dream-destroying machine show that Greece has some of the most restrictive laws in Europe for startups and small businesses. But here's the thing: when the country's own administrative machine becomes the biggest obstacle to progress, you know it's time to question whether it's worth continuing to try. Tourism in Greece has transformed into a poisoned blessing that is literally killing the soul of the country. What started as an opportunity for economic recovery after the crisis has become a logistical nightmare that made it impossible for Greeks to live in their own cities. Santorini, for example, receives more than 2 million visitors per year on an island with only 15,000 inhabitants. Imagine your neighborhood receiving 130 strangers for each resident every day of the year. The urban geography was completely redesigned to serve tourists. Local bakeries became souvenir shops, traditional markets were replaced by expensive restaurants, and beaches that were hangouts for local families now cost €50 to access. The curiosities about this phenomenon include the surreal fact that it's cheaper for a Greek to vacation in Turkey than in their own Greek islands. The daily life of local residents has become logistical hell during the summer months. Impossible traffic, endless lines at supermarkets, and constant noise from groups of drunk tourists who treat Greece like a big amusement park. Meanwhile, prices of everything have skyrocketed to premium European levels, but salaries remain those of a developing country. The geographical curiosities about Mykonos reveal that locals now need to do basic shopping on other islands because local supermarkets only sell expensive imported products for tourists. It's absolutely insane how tourism managed to transform natural paradises into financial traps for those who were born there. Families who lived entire generations fishing and cultivating olive trees now work cleaning bathrooms in 5-star hotels. What's most revolting is that this predatory tourism model doesn't economically benefit ordinary Greeks, only a small politically connected elite. Large resorts and cruise companies are mostly foreign-owned, taking most of the profits out of the country. But here's the kicker: while tourists post Instagram-worthy photos of Greek paradise, real Greeks are being expelled from their own communities by accelerated gentrification. The curiosities about this transformation show that many traditional villages now have more signs in English than in Greek. When your own culture becomes a commodity to be consumed by others, you're not living anymore, you're just performing. Greek cultural identity is being systematically erased by a gentrification process that would make historical colonizers proud of its efficiency. Traditional neighborhoods that preserved their essence for centuries have been transformed into artificial scenarios for tourists, where authentic tavernas became expensive, gastronomic experiences that Greeks themselves can no longer afford. The cultural geography of the country has been completely reconfigured. Local festivals were replaced by commercial events, traditional musicians were exchanged for international DJs, and even the Greek language is being progressively replaced by English in commercial areas. The curiosities about this cultural transformation include the bizarre fact that there are more pseudo-Greek restaurants for tourists than authentic traditional tavernas on many islands. Well, when your own culture becomes a performance for others' entertainment, you're no longer living your heritage, you're selling it. The gentrification process didn't happen gradually, it was a cultural tsunami that swept away entire communities in just a few years. Families who maintained traditions for generations were forced to abandon their ancestral homes because they can no longer afford the cost of living inflated by tourism. Meanwhile, foreign investors buy historic properties and transform them into themed heirlooms, creating a Disney version of Greek culture. The geographical curiosities about urban transformation reveal that entire neighborhoods in Athens are now inhabited mostly by American and European expatriates who discovered Greece during the pandemic. It's absolutely heartbreaking to see Greek children growing up without knowing their own grandparents' traditions because these traditions have been commercialized and decharacterized. What's most tragic is that this loss of identity isn't just aesthetic, it's existential. When you can no longer practice your own culture because it's been transformed into a tourist product, you lose the sense of belonging to your own land. Young Greeks report feeling like foreigners in their own country, speaking English at work, eating international food because Greek restaurants have become too expensive, and participating in festivals created to please tourists instead of celebrating local traditions. The curiosities about this identity crisis show that many young Greeks know more about American culture, through movies and social media, than about their own ancestral traditions. But here's the thing, when a nation loses its cultural soul in exchange for tourist dollars, it doesn't just lose its identity, it loses its future. After all this brutal reality, one question remains: would you still bet your future on a country that expels its own children? The Mediterranean dream you're nurturing could become your worst nightmare. But here's the thing, now you have information that 99% of people ignore. The curiosities about this transformation are red alerts that could save you from a disastrous decision. So, what will you do? Continue dreaming about a Greece that no longer exists, or explore viable alternatives like Portugal, Spain and Malta? The geographical curiosities about these options reveal real opportunities for prosperous life. The Mediterranean dream is still possible, but maybe elsewhere. The choice is yours. Close your eyes to this reality or use this information for smart decisions about your future. If this content opened your eyes, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to continue receiving information that really matters, the kind that can change your life before it's too late.